Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. Captain Daeho Kim stood on the observation deck of the civilian mining vessel, New Bususan, and watched the planet turn beneath him. Taeyang Graver looked peaceful from orbit, an emerald world threaded with silver rivers and the soft geometric scars of human industry. Sunlight rolled over its continents in slow waves, catching the glass domes of the coastal cities and the mirrored hulls of orbital elevators rising like needles toward space. 15 years. That was how long it had taken to turn this once barren rock into a home. 50,000 people live down there now. Families, researchers, engineers, children who had never seen Earth and never needed to. Tian Gravor was all they knew. Daejo folded his hands behind his back and allowed himself, just for a moment, to feel proud. Morning shift departing for surface, announced a calm, automated voice. Through the forward viewport, a stream of cargo shuttles peeled away from the New Bususan, their engines flaring blue as they dropped toward the planet. Miners heading to the southern extraction fields, agricultural crews bound for the equatorial farms. Another ordinary day at the far edge of human space. He had spent 30 years in the void. Freighters, colony ships, survey vessels. He had seen pirates, border skirmishes, trade wars between corporations so vicious they might as well have been real wars. But out here, this far beyond the main routes, space was quiet. Too quiet, some might say. "Captain," came a hesitant voice from behind him. Daejo turned. Communications officer Hee-Jin Choi stood at her console, posture rigid. She was young, 25 maybe, and wore the starched uniform of a fresh academy graduate. This was her first deep space assignment. He remembered that look in the mirror from long ago, excitement barely containing fear. "What is it, Officer Choi?" he asked. "Long-range sensors just picked up incoming vessels, sir." He frowned slightly. "Traffic?" She shook her head. "No transponder signals, no commercial IDs." Daeho stepped closer. "How many?" She swallowed. 12. No, 15. The deck seemed to grow quieter around them. "Size class?" "They're big, sir. Much larger than our cargo haulers. Larger than anything I've seen outside of fleet archives." Daejo's stomach tightened. "Any response to standard hails?" "No, sir. Nothing on any channel." That cold feeling crept into his chest, the one every veteran spacer recognized. In 30 years, he had never encountered unidentified war-capable vessels this far from established conflict zones. The outer colonies were supposed to be safe. Pirates didn't come this far. Raiders didn't waste resources on low-yield civilian worlds. "Put me on General Comm," he said quietly. The console chimed. "You're live, Capt." Daejo straightened his posture, schooling his voice into calm authority. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Daeho Kim of the civilian mining ship New Bususan. You are approaching the Taeyang Gravor colony system. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Silence answered him. The sensor display updated again. The unknown ships continued their steady advance, now close enough to resolve their silhouettes. They were not human. Human ships were rounded, clean-lined, built with a visual language of efficiency and safety. These were angular, brutal, dark wedges of armor bristling with forward-mounted weapon arrays. "Warships." "Sir," Hee-Jin said, her voice beginning to tremble. "They're powering up weapon systems." Daejo did not hesitate. "Emergency channel. Get me Admiral Lee at Earth Command." Her fingers flew. "Sir, signal latency is 20 minutes. Do it anyway." He turned to the helm. "Full burn away from the planet. Best speed." The helm officer nodded sharply, engines spooling up as the New Bususan began to pivot. The aliens fired. The first beam struck the primary orbital mining platform. 500 workers ceased to exist in a single flash of white light. The second blast tore through the main communications satellite, scattering molten debris in a silent, expanding cloud. The third shot hit the New Bususan. The bridge exploded into chaos. Daeho was thrown from his feet as the ship shuddered violently. Emergency lights bathed the deck in pulsing red. The smell of burning circuitry flooded the air. "Report!" he barked as he forced himself upright. "Hull breach on deck 7, the damage officer shouted. "Rapid atmosphere loss." "Engines at 40%, the helm officer added, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Controls are sluggish." Dejo grabbed the rail beside Hyjin's console. "Did the message get out?" She nodded frantically. "Yes, sir. Right before they destroyed the satellite, that was all the warning humanity would get. Below them, hell descended." On the surface of Taeyongravor, Dr. So Young Park was in her laboratory when the sky ignited. Her research station sat on a grassy hill overlooking the main colony of New Seoul. She had spent 7 years cataloging the planet's native plant life. Quiet work, patient work. The promise of new medicines slept in the alien genomes she studied. She was adjusting a sample under the microscope when her assistant, Junho, burst through the lab door. "Doctor, you need to see this, now." She followed him outside, confusion turning to dread as she looked up. Dark shapes were cutting across the sky. At first, they looked like falling stars. Then the beams struck. The city vanished in a silent surge of light so bright it painted the horizon white. A pressure wave rolled across the hills seconds later, flattening trees and throwing both of them to the ground. Windows shattered. The research dome fractured like brittle glass. More beams followed. The mining facilities at the coast melted into glowing slag. Agricultural grids burned in vast geometric patterns. From orbit, it would have looked like an artist erasing a civilization with careful, methodical strokes. So Young dragged Junho toward the emergency shelter as the ground trembled beneath their feet. The sky itself seemed to be tearing open. They never made it inside. On the bridge of the new Bususan, Daeho watched the planet die in real time. Beams of energy crisscrossed the atmosphere, precise and merciless. The aliens did not target only the cities. They hunted everything: farms, outposts, remote homesteads, even single structures standing alone in the wilderness. No survivors, no warnings, no mercy. "Half the crew is gone," the medical officer whispered over the comm. "We're losing oxygen on 3 decks. Dejo closed his eyes for half a second, then reopened them. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he said hoarsely. "Civilian vessel New Bususan. Taeyongravor is under attack. Unknown alien force. Total destruction in progress. 50,000 civilians." His voice cracked. "They're all dead." The new Bususan, bleeding atmosphere and power, limped away from the ruined system. Behind them, the alien fleet continued its methodical extermination until there was nothing left to destroy. 20 light-years away, in the heart of Earth Command, Admiral Jin Woo Lee received the message. He had been reviewing supply manifests when his aide burst into the office, face drained of color. "Sir, you need to hear this." The recording played. Hyjin's broken voice filled the room, layered with static and screams. The image of Taeyonggravor's destruction scrolled across the tactical display. Jin Woo did not move. He had served 40 years in uniform. He had fought in the last real war, back when humans still killed each other over water and metal. He had seen cities burn before, but never like this. "Confirm," he said. The aide swallowed. "We've lost contact with 3 more colonies. Same pattern. No warning. Total annihilation. Hanu Station, New Mokpo, Katsiam Research Base." Jinwoo walked slowly to the viewport overlooking Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents untouched by fear. "How many?" he asked quietly. 17 confirmed colonies, sir." His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Older than he remembered, eyes colder than they should have been. "Signal the Defense Council," he said. "Emergency session. Code Black." The aide froze. "Sir, Code Black hasn't been declared in 50 years. "I know." Jin Woo turned from the window and walked to the sealed safe embedded in the far wall. His hand never hesitated as he entered a code memorized decades ago, a sequence no one ever believed would be used again. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside rested a single red key, and with it, the end of an era. The room beneath Earth Command was older than the fleet itself. Admiral Jin Woo Lee descended alone, his boots echoing softly against stone steps carved when humanity still feared nuclear fire more than alien war. The elevator could have taken him down in seconds, but this place had never trusted convenience. The old architects had believed that weapons of last resort deserved a last walk of reflection. At the bottom of the stairwell, a single reinforced door waited. No markings, no insignia, just steel thick enough to survive the fall of civilization. Jinwoo pressed the red key into the ancient slot. The door unlocked with a sound like a held breath finally released. Inside, the chamber was cold and dim. A circular war table dominated the center, its surface dark and empty. Around it, 12 seats stood for the members of the Defense Council, some already occupied, others filling as priority alerts dragged leaders from sleep, from negotiations, from ordinary life. The last to arrive was Director Han So-jin of Fleet Engineering. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes sharp despite the hour. 17 colonies, she said flatly as she took her seat. No survivors. Correct, Jinwoo replied. No demands, no communication, just extermination. A murmur rippled through the chamber. This violates every known rule of interstellar engagement, one of the counselors said. Even the worst of the old pirate syndicates. These are not pirates, Jinwoo cut in. Pirates want profit. These attackers wanted only death. The lights dimmed further, and the table came alive with holographic projections. Red markers flared across distant sectors of human space, each one a colony that no longer existed. The pattern was unmistakable, a sweeping arc of annihilation cutting inward from the outer spiral. They're pushing toward core territories, Director Han said quietly. A systematic advance. And our response? Asked Counselor Reyes. Jinwoo did not answer immediately. He placed the red key at the center of the table. Several counselors went pale. You can't be serious, Reyes whispered. That program was mothballed for a reason. It was mothballed because we were afraid of what we built, Jinwoo replied. Not because it failed. The Thunder Soul was designed for human enemies, another counselor protested. For extinction-level war. These are aliens. We know nothing about their thresholds, their reactions. We know enough, Jinwoo said, his voice cold as vacuum. They attack without warning. They kill civilians. They erase children from the sky. He met each of their eyes in turn. They have already chosen the kind of war this will be. Silence reigned for several long seconds. Director Han leaned back slowly. If we activate the Thunder Soul, the galaxy will feel it, even if we fire a single weapon. Yes, Jinwoo said. That is the point. Reyes closed his eyes. You're talking about ending an era of diplomacy with one decision. No, Jinwoo answered. They ended it the moment they fired on Taeyong Gravor. The vote was not unanimous, but it did not need to be. By ancient charter, the destruction of civilian populations on that scale triggered autonomous authority. The red key already carried the council's consent, given by ancestors who had lived through a darker age. Jinwoo rose. Begin Thunder Soul activation procedures. Far from Earth, beyond the orbit of Saturn, the Titan shipyards had slept for half a century. They were not abandoned, not forgotten, merely waiting. The first lights came on without human command. Backup reactors stirred, ancient capacitors bleeding stored power into systems that had not tasted current in decades. Massive hangar doors, each the size of a mountain face, trembled as locked mechanisms disengaged. Deep within the facility's shadowed womb, something impossibly vast began to wake. Construction drones poured from hidden alcoves like metallic insects, swarming across a hull so enormous it bent perspective. Kilometer by kilometer, layers of dormant armor were stripped away, gray preservation coating flaking into drifting clouds of dust. Beneath it, the true surface emerged. Black. Not a simple black of paint or alloy, but a depthless absence that drank in light. Energy patterns slithered just beneath the skin of the hull, thin, luminous veins crawling like slow lightning beneath obsidian glass. To look at them directly made the eyes ache. The Thunder Soul had been sleeping. Now it remembered that it was alive. On the primary observation deck, Captain Wu Jin Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring through reinforced glass as the ship revealed itself. "It's larger than I remembered," Commander Mira Song said beside him. She was 35, young for an officer at her level. Born into an era that spoke of war only as history, Han's mouth tightened faintly. Everything feels smaller in peacetime. Mira studied the emerging dreadnought with visible unease. Did we really need to build something like this? Han did not answer at first. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. "We didn't build it to fight wars," he said. "We built it to end them." Below them, the heart of the ship stirred. Chief Engineer Boram Yun watched the diagnostic projections with growing tension. She was 60 now, her hair threaded with silver, her hands scarred by a lifetime of impossible machines. She had been there when the Thunder Soul was first assembled, when its systems were still theoretical, when failure had meant annihilation. "The quantum fold generators aren't sinking," her assistant reported. "Power flows are unstable." "That's because they were never meant to go cold," Boram replied. "These systems are alive. You don't shut them down like simple engines." She stepped up to the primary interface and laid her palm against it. "Easy now," she murmured. "You remember who you are." Deep in the ship's core, something that was neither fully machine nor fully anything else began to stir. On the bridge, Admiral Jin Woo Lee appeared on the central display. "Captain Han," he said, "the galaxy is changing while we speak." Han inclined his head. "It already has. The enemy is a confederation from the outer spiral," Jinwoo continued. "We call them the Vorak. They've been conquering smaller species for centuries. We believe humanity was next on their list of erasures." "They made a mistake," Han said calmly. "Yes," Jinwoo replied. "They did." The Thunder Soul's power climbed past 40%. Corridors stretched for kilometers inside the ship, awakening section by section. Weapons bays large enough to house entire cruisers unlocked and rotated into firing alignment. Dozens of main batteries cycled through initialization sequences older than some human nations. On one of the lower decks, Lieutenant Ya-Jin Lim stood at the edge of the primary gunnery control pit. The room dwarfed her. Dozens of weapon stations curved around a central command well. Targeting computers pulsed with layered data streams so complex they bordered on sentient thought. She had requested this posting because she wanted to serve on the most powerful ship in the fleet. Standing here now, she felt very small. "Main cannons reaching operational temperature," her chief petty officer reported. "Diagnostics within acceptable variance." She swallowed. "Run them again. I want zero uncertainty." He hesitated. "Ma'am, do we really need this much firepower for one species?" Ya-Jin didn't answer right away, because the truth was already written in the stars over 17 dead worlds. By the time the Thunder Soul's power stabilized at 60%, intelligence had painted a clearer picture. Captain Kyunggu Nam stood at the tactical display, his fingers gliding over streams of intercepted data. "Vorak fleet strength is estimated at 200 primary warships," he reported. "Possibly 300 including support units, energy-based weapons. Thick but conventional armor. They favor overwhelming frontal assaults. They're used to easy victories," Mira observed. Nam nodded. "Exactly, ma'am. They've never faced a species that could strike back." Hans stared at the red cluster of enemy markers. "They will." On the far side of the solar system, something felt the Thunder Soul awaken. War Prime Krulex stood on the command platform of his flagship, the Void Render, gazing at a tactical display that did not yet show humanity's response, but soon would. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Humans have no standing fleet in this sector." Sub-Commander Vex hesitated. "War Prime, there are anomalies in human industrial space. Massive power activations near Titan orbit." Krulex's eyes narrowed slightly. "One ship cannot change the fate of a war," he said. In that moment, Both species crossed the final, invisible line between peace and extinction. And the Thunder Soul opened its eyes. The Thunder Soul did not wake all at once. It stirred in layers, like a sleeping god becoming aware of its body for the first time in half a century. Power flowed till meter-long conduits. Artificial gravity stabilized across decks that had not felt weight since before most of the crew had been born. Emergency lighting flickered off section by section, replaced by the cold, steady white glow of full operational status. Captain Wu Jin Han stood on the command deck as the ship's internal systems came alive around him. The bridge itself was a cathedral of dark metal and translucent tactical glass, its ceiling rising 3 stories overhead. The central command ring rotated slowly as it calibrated to the ship's restored mass distribution. Power at 70% and climbing, Chief Engineer Borum Yoon reported from engineering. Core stability holding, quantum fold generators synchronizing. Storm protocol systems? Han asked. There was a pause. Still locked behind triple isolation, Borum replied carefully, which is where they should stay unless you truly intend to frighten the universe. Han allowed himself the faintest shadow of a smile. Not yet. On the gunnery deck, Lieutenant Ya-Jin Lim watched the main cannons finish their calibration cycles. 12 colossal weapon barrels aligned along the Thunder Soul's forward spine, each one longer than most warships in the current human fleet. She ran her fingers lightly over the edge of her console. Each cannon could punch through layered planetary defense grids. Each shot could erase a city. And there were 12 of them. Gunnery to bridge, she said. Main weapons are fully online. Conventional and exotic arrays responding within 0.1% tolerance. Outstanding, Han replied. Hold fire unless directly ordered. Ya-Jin exhaled slowly. She had trained her whole life for this moment. She had never truly believed it would come. In the intelligence bay, Kyonggu Nam projected a 3-dimensional battle map of the Vorak staging zones. Red icons pulsed against a field of star systems already dark with the ghosts of lost human colonies. They've consolidated patrol groups near the ruins of Teangravor, he reported. Small strike clusters sweeping for survivors. Survivors? Mira asked quietly. Nam shook his head. None confirmed. The bridge fell silent. Han's voice cut through the stillness. Plot an intercept vector. Short-range reconnaissance only. You're taking the Thunder Soul into active enemy space with partial systems? Mira questioned. Han turned to face her. Commander, that ship murdered 50,000 civilians without resistance. His eyes were flat, steady. They will not be granted the courtesy of preparation. The Thunder Soul moved for the first time in 50 years. From outside, it appeared as if space itself bent to allow the dreadnought passage. The ship did not accelerate in any traditional sense. It folded the fabric of distance around its mass and stepped across the gap between stars. To ordinary sensors, it vanished. To those who knew what to look for, it left behind a wound in reality that took minutes to close. The Vorak patrol did not see it arrive. 3 alien warships cruised in tight formation through the debris field that had once been Teangravor's outer orbital ring. Their hulls were jagged and layered, like the overlapping plates of predators adapted for vacuum combat. Energy weapons glowed faintly at their forward edges. They were hunting debris. They expected no resistance. Targets acquired, Ya-Jin said softly, as the Thunder Soul materialized behind them. Range 52,000 kilometers. Han studied the 3 alien silhouettes on the tactical display. Fire 1 main cannon, he said. Minimum output. The Thunder Soul spoke. There was no sound. No flash, just a beam of concentrated annihilation so pure that space itself seemed to shy away from its passage. The lead Vorak vessel ceased to exist. Not exploded, not shattered, gone. Where a kilometer-long warship had been, there was only an expanding ripple of dust from nearby debris caught in the wake of absence. On the bridge, several officers stared in open shock. What the hell? Mira whispered. The remaining 2 Vorak ships reacted instantly. Their formation broke as both vessels spun and pushed their engines beyond safe tolerances, fleeing in opposite directions. "Should we pursue?" Yajin asked. Han watched their retreating signatures. "No," he said calmly. He leaned forward slightly. "Let them run." The Thunder Soul did not chase. It watched. Across the Vorak fleet network, panic spread like an electrical storm. The fleeing patrol ships transmitted emergency bursts filled with fragmented imagery and corrupted sensor data. What came through intact made no sense. A black shape, 5 kilometers long, a single shot, one ship erased. War Prime Krulex received the report in stunned silence. "One ship," he repeated slowly. "You are telling me a single human vessel destroyed a battle cruiser with one shot?" "Yes, War Prime." Krulex's mandibles flexed in irritation. "Then it was a super weapon platform, rare but not unprecedented. Double patrol strength in the sector. I want constant tracking on that vessel." Subcommander Vex, standing near the rear of the command chamber, said nothing. But the data he had seen unsettled him deeply. Back aboard the Thunder Soul, Captain Han studied the enemy's dispersal patterns. "They're beginning to spread their forces," Kyunggu Nam observed, "attempting to avoid a concentrated strike. Then we will make concentration irrelevant," Han replied. What followed was not a battle. It was a hunt. The Thunder Soul began to appear without warning at the edges of Vorak patrol zones. A 6-ship reconnaissance group vanished in 8 seconds. A 12-ship supply convoy was erased before its escort could even lock weapons. Every attack followed the same pattern. Jump in. Fire. Jump out. No warnings. No transmissions. No mercy. By the end of the first day, 47 Vorak vessels no longer existed. On the second day, fear overtook coordination. "War Prime," one of his officers said, voice shaking. "We're receiving withdrawal requests from multiple divisions. They claim the human ship can appear anywhere at any time." "Then they are cowards," Krulex snapped. "With respect," Subcommander Vex said quietly, "they are survivors." Krulex ignored him. On the third day, the Thunder Soul changed its tactics. 24 Vorak cruisers had formed a defensive ring near one of the system's moons. Their shields were up. Their weapons were charged. They were ready. Han studied their formation with interest. "They're learning," Mira said. "Good," Han replied. "Lieutenant Lim, target engines only." Yajin's eyes widened slightly. "Disable? Not destroy." "I want them alive," Han said. "For now." The Thunder Soul appeared directly above the enemy formation. The Vorak opened fire instantly. Dozens of energy beams slammed into the Thunder Soul's shields, washing across them like meaningless rain. The ship did not slow. It did not flinch. Yajin fired. 24 precision strikes punched through engine housings. One by one, the alien cruisers spun helplessly into uncontrolled drift. "Targets disabled," she reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Life support remains intact." "Good," Han said. "Open a broadcast channel." The screen flared to life with distorted images of terrified Vorak crews scrambling across darkened command decks. "Vorak vessels," Han said evenly. "You have 5 minutes to send messages to your families. Tell them you died because your leaders chose to murder human children." He closed the channel. On the disabled ships, panic erupted. Some crews attempted desperate engine repairs. Others transmitted frantic, broken messages across subspace. A few sat in silence, waiting. Exactly 5 minutes later, Han gave the order. This time, Yajin did not disable. 24 ships became 24 expanding clouds of ionized debris. On the void render, War Prime Krulex felt the structure of his fleet disintegrating. 73 confirmed losses, his intelligence officer reported. Another 12 presumed destroyed. Time since first contact, 36 hours. Krulex sank into his command throne. Not a single human casualty had been recorded. "Supreme Leader transmission incoming," another officer announced. The towering form of Threx filled the command chamber's central display. Scarred, ancient, and radiating authority. "You will explain why a single human vessel is dismantling our invasion," Threx said coldly. Krulex lowered his head. We misjudged the species, Supreme Leader. Misjudgment is weakness, Threx replied. You will correct it. We may need to withdraw, Krulex said carefully. The chamber went silent. Unacceptable, Threx declared. The Confederacy does not retreat from inferior beings. As the transmission cut, Sub-Commander Vex met Krulex's gaze. We are not fighting an inferior species, Vex said softly. We are fighting an awakening god. Back aboard the Thunder Soul, Chief Engineer Borum Yoon stared at power readouts she had hoped never to see active again. Storm protocol systems are reaching operational readiness, she reported. Captain, once these are brought online, the energy signature will be visible across half the galaxy. Han's voice was calm. That is precisely what they need to see. The Thunder Soul rotated slightly, its massive silhouette aligning with deeper Vorak fleet concentrations. In the dark between the stars, the universe held its breath, and the black giant prepared to teach the galaxy what it meant when humanity chose war. By the fourth day, the Vorak war machine was no longer a coordinated force. It was a scattering of terrified fleets, blind prey fleeing from a predator they could not see, could not track, and could not understand. The Thunder Soul became a ghost in their command networks, appearing without warning, vanishing without trace, leaving only ruin behind. No matter how the Vorak repositioned their ships, no matter how they layered sensor nets or concentrated firepower, the human dreadnought always arrived where it was least expected. Jump in, kill, disappear. The pattern was mercilessly perfect. Captain Wu Jin Han stood at the center of the bridge as tactical projections updated in real time. Red icons winked out one by one across 3 star systems. Each disappearance represented thousands of Vorak soldiers, officers, engineers, crew, people who would never see their homes again. He felt no triumph, only momentum. Enemy morale is collapsing, Kyongu Nam reported. We're intercepting widespread panic transmissions. Some commanders are falsifying sensor data to avoid detection. Others are shutting down long-range communication entirely. They think silence will make them invisible, Mira said bitterly. To predators, silence only makes the hunt quieter, Han replied. The Thunder Soul executed another short-range fold, reappearing on the far side of a drifting Vorak logistics hub. The hub was enormous, an ugly lattice of docking arms and storage cylinders swollen with munitions and fuel. Dozens of transport ships clung to its surface like parasites. Targets confirmed, Yajin said. Primarily support vessels. Destroy the hub, Han ordered. Leave the transports. The Thunder Soul's secondary battery spoke in rapid succession. The logistics station ruptured in a rolling chain of white-hot detonations as its stored antimatter reserves vented uncontrollably. Fire swallowed steel. Docked transports broke free in disorganized panic, scattering into the void. You're cutting their supply lines before they even realize they're starving, she said. Han nodded. An army with no fuel is already dead. It just hasn't fallen yet. Across War Prime Krulex stood hunched over the tactical table aboard the Void Render. Red hazard symbols flooded every sector. Patrol routes were meaningless now. Every planned engagement zone had become a killing ground. They are not fighting a war, one of his officers whispered. They are erasing us. Krulex clenched his claws. Then we will force them into battle. Consolidate all remaining forces at Haniel System. Full defensive formation. If they want blood, they will have to wade through it. Sub-Commander Vex studied the same display and felt dread coil through his chest. War Prime, they want us to mass. They would never face us head-on, Krulex snarled. Not against this many ships. Vex almost said, they already have. On the Thunder Soul, Kyongu Nam intercepted the transmission as it rippled across encrypted Vorak channels. They're consolidating at Hanule, he reported. Roughly 150 ships, mixed heavy cruisers, destroyers, support vessels, flagship included. Mira stiffened. That's their entire remaining strike force. Han studied the formation slowly. They think numbers will shield them. Should we engage? Yajin asked. Han was silent for several seconds. Then he shook his head. Not yet. The Thunder Soul did not move toward Haniel. Instead, it turned away. For 12 hours, it hunted the stragglers, fleeing scouts, isolated escorts, disabled vessels drifting helplessly near dead stars. In each encounter, the outcome was the same: brief existence, followed by erasure. On one crippled Vorak ship, engines dead and shields failing, the crew transmitted blindly into the dark. "We surrender," their commander cried. "We surrender to the humans. We offer tribute. We offer prisoners. We offer worlds." The Thunder Soul did not respond. A single beam removed the ship from existence mid-transmission. On the bridge, Yajin felt her hands shaking after the shot. "They were begging," she whispered. "They were begging after they murdered children," Han replied calmly. "These are not equal acts." By the end of the 5th day, only 2 significant Vorak formations remained: the massed fleet at Hanule and War Prime Krulex's personal command group, 37 ships hiding in the shadow of a collapsing red giant at the system's outer edge. "They are trying to mask their drives in stellar noise," Kyonggu Nam explained. Han's gaze flicked briefly to that distant cluster. "Let them hide," he said. "They'll watch the rest of their kind die first." On Haniel, the Vorak fleet waited in dread. 150 warships arranged in layered defensive spheres around the Titanic flagship at their center. Shields flared continuously. Weapon arrays tracked empty space with desperate vigilance. Every Vorak officer knew the human ship was coming. They just didn't know when. "We are receiving nothing," an intelligence officer whispered to Krulex over a secure relay. "No drive signatures. No energy spikes. Nothing." "That is because it is already watching us," Krulex replied softly. The Thunder Soul arrived 3 light minutes from the edge of the defensive formation. It did not attack. It drifted, a vast, silent silhouette suspended in the cold dark, its black hull absorbing starlight, its energy patterns pulsing faintly beneath the surface, like the heartbeat of something ancient and predatory. Every Vorak sensor locked onto it instantly. "All batteries, target the human vessel," the Haniel fleet commander screamed. "Fire at will." The Vorak fleet unleashed everything. Hundreds of energy beams converged on the Thunder Soul in a storm of plasma and particle fire. Space lit up like a dying sun. On the bridge of the Thunder Soul, warning indicators flickered briefly across shield readouts, then stabilized. The Thunder Soul did not slow. It did not maneuver. It simply drifted forward through the storm of fire, like a mountain walking through rain. "Lieutenant Lim," Han said quietly, "engines only. Disable their outer ring." Yajin fired. Dozens of precision strikes lanced out across the void. Vorak's ships on the outer defensive layer lost propulsion almost simultaneously. Their formation collapsed as disabled vessels drifted helplessly into neighboring ships, causing cascading collisions. Panic detonated inside the enemy formation. "They're inside the shield envelope," someone shouted over Vorak channels. "They're not stopping." More fire poured in. It did nothing. On the Thunder Soul, Borum Yun watched the shield harmonics with mounting unease. "They're pouring everything they have into us," she warned. "If they somehow resonate a harmonic cascade—" "They won't," Han said. And they didn't. After 3 minutes of continuous fire, Vorak weapons began to fail from thermal overload. Their formations shattered into chaos. Han raised one hand. "Cease fire." Yajin froze, stunned. "Sir?" "Let them breathe," Han said. "Let them understand what it feels like to be spared." The Thunder Soul drifted silently at the heart of the shattered formation. On dozens of Vorak ships, commanders stared at their consoles in disbelief. The human ship had stopped killing. For the first time since the war began, the Thunder Soul opened wideband communication. "Vorak fleet at Hanule," Han's voice echoed through their command networks. "You are alive because I allow it." Silence swallowed the channel. "Your war against humanity is over," Han continued. "Your leaders will not save you. Your numbers will not shield you. Your gods will not intervene." He paused. "Return to your worlds. and carry this message with you. The channel closed. The Thunder Soul folded space and vanished. In the stunned void it left behind, the shattered Vorak fleet slowly began to retreat. On the void render, war-primed Krulex listened to the intercepted transmission in absolute horror. "They could have erased us," an officer whispered. "They chose not to." Krulex stared at the display that marked the Thunder Soul's last known position. "No," he said hoarsely. "They chose to teach us fear." Back aboard the Thunder Soul, Borum Yun turned toward Han. "You just spared them," she said. "After everything they did." Han did not look away from the stars. "I spared witnesses," he said. Kyonggu Nam's console chimed. "Captain, we're detecting something new. Massive energy buildup across multiple Vorak shipyards. They're attempting emergency weapon activation. Something large." Mira frowned. "Desperation play?" "Yes," Nam said. "They know the end is coming." Han closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them. "Chief Engineer," he said softly, "begin Storm Protocol arming sequence." On the Thunder Soul, ancient systems unlocked for the first time in 50 years. Across half the galaxy, sensors screamed as an impossible energy signature ignited in the dark. And every species that could see it felt the same thing. The universe was about to be rewritten. The first sign that Storm Protocol was waking was not light, it was silence. Across the Thunder Soul, background vibrations ceased. The subtle hum of power distribution faded into an unnatural stillness, as if the ship itself were holding its breath. Then the gravity fluctuated, just a fraction, enough for loose particles to lift briefly from the deck before settling again. Chief Engineer Borum Yun stared at her instruments in dawning horror. "The system is no longer drawing energy from the reactors," she said slowly. "It's bypassing them." "From where?" Commander Mirasong asked. Borum did not answer immediately. Her hands trembled slightly over the console. "From everywhere," she said at last. "Vacuum energy, quantum fluctuation fields. It's extracting power directly from the structure of space itself." On the bridge, the forward viewport dimmed as if the stars were receding. The Thunder Soul's black armor began to glow, not with light, but with absence. The luminous energy patterns beneath the hull surged from faint white to blinding brilliance, tracing geometries no human language had words for. Lieutenant Ya-Jin Lim felt pressure build behind her eyes, as weapon systems climbed into ranges she had only seen in forbidden simulation files. "Captain," she whispered, "power levels are exceeding test thresholds by a factor of 12. Han's voice was steady. "Proceed." Far ahead, in the Hanyul system, 78 Vorak warships assembled in a final, desperate formation. Their shields were reinforced. Their weapons were charged beyond safety tolerances. Every vessel pointed inward, forming a layered sphere around their flagship. They had learned. Too late. War Prime Krulex stood on the command dais of the Void Render, staring at the incoming sensor feed. The human ship hovered far outside effective weapons range, motionless, waiting. "What is it doing?" he demanded. His science officer's voice shook. "War Prime, the energy buildup is unlike anything we have ever recorded. It is not contained within the vessel. It is bleeding into local space-time." Krulex felt fear do what no enemy ever had: tighten his chest. "We must withdraw," his tactical officer urged. "Now, at full emergency burn." Krulex hesitated. The Confederacy had never retreated. But the Confederacy was already dead. "All ships," he ordered at last. "Emergency withdrawal. Break formation." The Vorak fleet surged outward in chaotic retreat, engines flaring as dozens of ships attempted to escape simultaneously. Collisions erupted among the panicked formation. Shields overloaded. Navigation solutions failed as sensor ghosts flooded their systems. They were running. Storm Protocol activated. There was no flash. There was no explosion. Reality screamed. Space around the Thunder Soul collapsed inward, then violently inverted. Quantum fields folded, shattered, and reassembled into geometries that had no right to exist. Gravity ceased to behave as force and became suggestion. Time did not stop, but it fractured, flowing at different rates in overlapping regions of void. From the bridge, the view was incomprehensible. Stars smeared into ribbons of color. Distant ships elongated into impossible silhouettes. Then, one by one, the Vorak fleet ceased to exist. Not burned, not shattered, not destroyed, erased. 78 warships and 150,000 lives vanished from the universe between two heartbeats. Where the fleet had been, there was only empty space. Too empty. A perfect spherical void, unnaturally clean, as if existence itself had been scrubbed away. On the Thundersoul, every system returned to baseline with surgical calm. Storm protocol deactivated, Boromune reported in a hollow voice. All primary systems stable. No one spoke. They were still trying to comprehend what they had done. Far across the void, War Prime Krulex was gone. His flagship had been at the edge of the annihilation zone, close enough that he saw it coming, close enough that he understood what it was, and close enough that he had time for one final thought before his existence unraveled. We were never predators. On the bridge of the Thundersoul, Commander Mira Song whispered, "There's nothing left." Han stared at the empty sphere where an invasion fleet had once been. "We've sent the message," he said quietly. News traveled faster than any fleet. A passing trade hauler in a neighboring system recorded gravitational distortions and a brief, blinding sensor blackout. When the interference cleared, the Vorak fleet was gone. The recording reached the Galactic Communications Network within hours. Across thousands of worlds, species watched the same impossible footage. A fleet, a single ship, then nothing. On Centauri Prime, Elder Council Speaker Mithros watched the transmission for the 13th time. "Is this authentic?" he asked softly. His science advisor nodded in subdued terror. "Our physicists believe the humans have weaponized quantum field collapse itself. The mathematical framework should be impossible. And yet, it happened." "And the ship survived this?" Mithros asked. "Yes, Speaker. It appears to be shielded from its own reality distortion." Mithros leaned back in his throne. "For centuries, peace has been maintained through balance," he murmured. "Mutual fear among equals. That balance is now extinct." Multiple diplomatic channels flared with unanswered messages. The Thundersoul did not respond. Ambassador Yunji Shin stood alone in her quiet diplomatic office on Centauri Prime when Admiral Jin Wu Li's encrypted transmission arrived. "You will establish a new protocol," he told her. "Human space is now absolutely inviolable. Any attack on our civilians will be met with immediate and total retaliation." Yunji hesitated. "That will be interpreted as dominion over the galaxy." "Yes," Li replied calmly, "and it will be obeyed." "What if they refuse?" A long pause. "Then they can ask the Vorak what refusal means." Yunji closed her eyes once before nodding. "Understood." Back in Vorak territory, the shockwave was more than political. Entire sectors fell silent as news of the annihilation spread. Shipyards were abandoned, fleets fractured into desperate refugee armadas. Dozens of client species declared immediate independence from the collapsing Confederacy. At the edge of a dying system, War Prime Krulex's last remaining command group, 37 battered ships, drifted in hiding. "They're coming for us," an officer whispered. No one argued. Long-range sensors suddenly screamed. A massive energy signature emerged from folded space. The Thundersoul had arrived. Krulex stared at the projected image of the black dreadnought filling his tactical display. "This was never a war," he said quietly. "This was an extinction event." "Open a channel," he ordered. On the bridge of the Thundersoul, Han watched the incoming signal request in silence. "Captain," Kyonggu Nam said carefully, "it's the last surviving Vorak command fleet. They request surrender negotiation." Han closed his eyes for 2 seconds. Then he opened them. "Accept the transmission." War Prime Krulex appeared on the bridge display. His voice was broken, stripped of pride, stripped of command. "Human Commander, I am War Prime Krulex of the Vorak Confederacy. I offer unconditional surrender, reparations, hostages, worlds, anything. Only stop. Han studied the alien for a long moment. You murdered 50,000 civilians, he said. We obeyed the doctrine of conquest, Krulek whispered. We believed you weak. Han's voice hardened. You confused peace with helplessness. A brief silence followed. Then Han gave the order. Set course for Vorak Prime. Krulex's eyes widened in terror. You would punish 8 billion civilians for my crime. Han looked at him coldly. No, he said. I will decide what justice looks like. The Thunder Soul folded space. For the first time in its history, it traveled not as a weapon in pursuit of enemies, but as a judge approaching a world. Vorak Prime hung beneath the Thunder Soul like a jewel trembling on the edge of annihilation. Blue oceans wrapped its continents in shining curves. White cloud systems spiraled across green land masses, dense with cities that glittered along coastlines and river valleys. From orbit, it was beautiful in the same way Earth was beautiful. Alive, crowded, fragile. 8 billion Vorak lived on that world. 8 billion civilians who had never fired upon Teangravor, who had never seen a human, who had never ordered the extermination of children. On the bridge of the Thunder Soul, silence reigned. Captain Wu Jin Han stood at the forward viewport, hands clasped behind his back, staring down at the world that had produced the fleets now scattered into dust across 3 star systems. Behind him, War Prime Krulek knelt within a containment field, his once imposing form diminished by gravity and defeat. He did not look up. Long-range transmissions from the surface, Kyonggu Nam reported softly. They're broadcasting on every frequency. Surrender offers, evacuation pleas, religious invocations, requests for mercy. Commander Mirasong swallowed. Their government collapsed, Nam replied. The Confederacy Council dissolved itself an hour ago. Planetary administration has shifted to emergency civilian control. Han closed his eyes for a moment. The storm protocol's afterimage still haunted his peripheral vision, an absence where an armada had once existed. He could end this now. One order, one pulse, and Vorak Prime would be nothing but a widening hole in the stars. Justice would be simple, final, and irreversible. Captain, Boromune said quietly from engineering, her voice weighted with years of consequences. If we activate storm protocol at planetary proximity, nothing will survive, not even the planet's orbit. Han nodded. I know. The bridge waited. 8 billion lives balanced on the edge of a single decision. At last, Han turned from the viewport. Open a planetary broadcast channel. The silence shattered as a unified transmission carrier surged through the ship's systems. Channel open, Yajin said. Han faced the holo camera. People of Vorak Prime, he began. His image appeared simultaneously on billions of screens across the planet. Public displays, personal terminals, emergency shelters, government command centers that no longer commanded anything. Your military forces attacked human civilians without warning, Han said. They killed 50,000 innocent people, children, families, scientists, farmers. Across Vorak Prime, streets fell silent. You did not authorize those actions, but they were taken in your name. War Prime Krulek trembled within his containment field. Your leadership has fallen. Your fleets have been destroyed. Your war is over. A pause. You will not be exterminated. A wave of stunned disbelief rolled across the planet. Han continued, you are hereby placed under human protection. Mira's breath caught. Protection? She whispered. You will be relocated in stages to designated settlement worlds under human supervision, Han said. Your infrastructure will be dismantled. Your military capacity will be permanently neutralized. Your species will exist again, but not as conquerors. Another pause. You will live under human law. You will be fed, sheltered, and monitored. His gaze hardened. This is mercy. More mercy than you showed our children. The channel closed. For a long moment, Vorak Prime did not move. Then, across the planet, 8 billion Vorak began to understand that their civilization had ended, and yet, against all expectation, their species had not. 6 months later, the Grand Assembly of the Elder Council had never been so crowded. Representatives of 200 species filled the immense circular chamber, their voices overlapping in a storm of protest, fear, and political panic. Above them, holographic projections displayed the same image again and again, the Thunder Soul, hovering in silent orbit beyond the council station. Ambassador Yunji Shin stood alone at the center of the assembly floor. Speaker Mithros raised both ancient arms for silence. The question before this council, the elder intoned, is how humanity will be integrated into the existing galactic order. Yunji smiled politely. Speaker Mithros, she said calmly, I believe you misunderstand the situation. The chamber stilled. Humanity is not seeking to integrate into your order, she continued. We are announcing the new one. Outrage erupted. Delegates rose to their feet, shouting protests, threats, ancient precedents, and treaties signed before humanity had even developed faster than light travel. You cannot dictate terms to civilizations that predate your species by millennia, a Zarian envoy cried. Yunji waited until the noise burned itself out. Then she activated the display. The image shifted from the Thunder Soul in orbit to empty space where the Vorak fleet had once existed. This is what happens to those who threaten human civilians, Yunji said evenly. The image changed again, now showing billions of Vorak refugees being relocated under guarded humanitarian convoys. They live, they are fed, they are housed, and they are watched. Speaker Mithros leaned forward. What does humanity demand? Human space is inviolable, Yunji replied. Any attack on our civilians will result in immediate and total retaliation. And in exchange, we will respect the sovereignty of every peaceful species. A Caldarian delegate hissed. And if we refuse these terms, Yunji did not raise her voice. Then you may ask the Vorak what refusal means. Silence crushed the chamber. Outside the station, the Thunder Soul drifted like a sleeping predator that required no sleep. Fleet Admiral Minho took command of the newly expanded human fleet from aboard his flagship, the New Harmony. Unlike the Thunder Soul, it was sleek, diplomatic in design, optimized for aid missions, trade escorts, and long-range patrols. But its weapons still rivaled the most powerful battleships other species could muster. We've received 12 formal requests for human protection in the last month, his aide reported. From whom? Minho asked. Border worlds, trading guilds, minor species that were previously under Vorak pressure. Minho nodded. And our response? Protection in exchange for trade concessions and recognition of human territorial claims. Minho allowed himself a thin smile. Humanity no longer needed to conquer. Fear was doing the work for them. At the edge of human space, the Thunder Soul remained on patrol. Captain Han had refused promotion, refused transfer, refused relief. He reduced his crew to a volunteer corps. Borum Yun, Yajin Lim, Kyunggu Nam, they called themselves the Watchers. Their duty was not to fight wars. Their duty was to make sure no one ever forgot what happened when humans were threatened. 1 year later, a distress signal reached the Watchers from the new Shanghai colony. Unknown ships in system, the transmission warned. They identify themselves as the hegemony of Rix. Han studied the incoming data. A young species, Nam reported. Aggressive expansion history. They have no records of the Vorak War. Han nodded. Set course. When the hegemony fleet arrived at New Shanghai, its commander broadcast confidently, "You will surrender your world immediately or be destroyed." Governor Park Sung-min replied calmly. "This is human space. You are ordered to leave." The alien commander laughed. "Then you will die." 3 seconds later, the Thunder Soul arrived. The hegemony fleet never finished registering its presence. 20 warships disintegrated one by one, not with storm protocol, but with deliberate, visible precision. Han wanted the galaxy to see. New Shanghai was safe before any of its citizens had time to become afraid. News of the destruction spread instantly. This time, no one doubted. Across known space, Expansion plans were canceled overnight. Trade corridors shifted. Military buildups halted, not because of peace, but because of proximity. Species that once debated whether humans mattered now measured their calendars by human patrol routes. On Earth, Dr. Hannah Kim at the Galactic Studies Institute finished compiling her newest report and sent it directly to Admiral Jinwoo Lee. The patterns were unmistakable. "They're afraid of us," she said over the channel. "Good," Lee replied. "But they're also arming themselves," she warned. "Not against us, against each other. They're afraid we'll expand next." Lee studied the data silently. Humanity had become the axis around which galactic behavior now turned. The Thunder Soul patrolled the dark between stars, not as a conqueror, not as a hero, but as the memory of a choice. Far beyond human borders, species told new, cautionary legends to their children. They spoke of a black giant that erased fleets without sound, of a species that chose peace until peace was mistaken for weakness, and of the moment the universe learned the difference.